go.
Last October, October 2019, on a very wet evening, Bishop Stephen Cottrell came to St Stephen's Church in Harlow, Essex, to chat about some of the many books that he'd written. Despite the weather, it was a wonderful evening, and we also raised some funds for one of our local homeless charities, Streets to Homes. Now, things that happen at church affect me in different ways. Spiritually, naturally, but often creatively. And following this special evening, I was moved to write a poem. One of the books that Bishop Stephen discussed with us was Striking Out, Poems and Stories from the Camino. The book is a spiritual diary of Stephen's 700-kilometre pilgrimage from his chapel in Chelmsford to Santiago de Compostela, and it comprises reflections, prayer poems and evocative images from that journey. Stephen set out well prepared. Well known in the Chelmsford diocese for his annual pilgrimages in and around our parishes, he knew what he needed and what he didn't. Nevertheless, he told us, despite his preparation, he soon had to downsize on the amount of things that he was carrying, clothes, etc. One thing, he said, lit a spark in my head that wouldn't go out, and so I composed the following poem to get it out of my system. The poem is in part a parody of the evening that we had, but it's well meant, good-humoured, and offered in faith and in love and affection for Bishop Stephen and my home church. The poem is written from the viewpoint of a 4-year-old boy dragged along reluctantly to the evening, and what happened next is called The Bishop's Knickers. The bishop came to visit our church the other night. Someone had suggested he'd like to talk about the books he likes to write. I was dragged along because our babysitter's sick, at home in bed with little Ted and a great big jar of Vic. The bishop's written lots of books on Christmas, Lent and walking, 1 or 2 with pictures, but far too many full of talking. They sat me in a corner with a box of tired toys, some loved, some lost, forgotten by other girls and boys. They'd laid out cake for everyone. They really looked appealing, raising funds to fix the holes in a very holy ceiling. The bishop started talking about art and inspiration and how such creativity and Christ could heal a fractured nation. As the bishop got into his stride, it became a background noise. Whilst others listened carefully, this wasn't the stuff for entertaining tired little boys. Apparently they'd reached a bit about a pilgrim's way in Spain. The bishop walked a long, long way and experienced little pain. It was all down to my walking boots, the bishop said, a proper pair of kickers. 1 hat, 1 coat, 3 string vests, and just 2 pairs of knickers. My head shot up. I heard a gasp, a murmuring of vicars. Could it be this holy man just said that he wore knickers? I skipped over to the group where my mum and dad were sitting. The general had dropped his monocle and Vera had dropped her knitting. The man in the funky waistcoat stood and said, "Let's take a break," diverting thoughts of underwear away with a glass of wine and a scrumptious slice of cake. The general was determined to address the bishop's pants, and with that in mind he steeled himself and started to advance. Suddenly the bubble burst. The British weather had done its worst. No lingerie was thankfully revealing as everyone stared up to the ceiling. The man in the funky waistcoat was a clever fellow and jumped forward with jugs and an umbrella, protecting the cake and glasses of wine as the bishop his books began to sign. Vera had achieved her goal and got the bishop cornered. "I have a question to ask," she said. The wardens glared to warn her. "Will you sign this book for me," she said, "on Bibles and beliefs?" No Knickers were mentioned. The wardens sighed, much to their relief. I had my fill of homemade cake. Dad drank too much wine. But there seemed to be agreement that we'd all had a jolly good time. The evening came to an end with much appreciation for the food, the fun and fellowship, and the bishop's revelation. We left with a dismissal, with compassion and with care, to go in peace to love and serve the Lord, and our bishop's brilliant underwear.